Hi, everyone. Our subject today is about the great fitna. We call it the major strife, al-fitna al-kubra. The basic rule that Abu Bakr and Omar build on their ruling system is to copy the Prophet as much as they can, mainly in realizing the concept of pure and absolute justice between the members of the communities with equal rights to all, Muslims and non-Muslims. As one of two axioms of Islam, preceded by spreading monotheism, which is the first axiom. Monotheism was spread before Islam, known before Islam. You know, it came with, started with Noah and then with Abraham and his sons and so on. And Allah advised us in verse 1349, saying, O mankind, we created you from a single pair of male and female, and made you into nations and tribes that you may acquaint one another. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. So we are all equal, but the best among us is the righteous one. We are all equal in right. So this is the second axiom after the monotheism. And this is what upset the noble Meccans. This equality upset noble Meccans as they ranked themselves top of the social pyramid. Now Islam levels between them and the slaves as well as in duties. Until now, humanity couldn't achieve the kind of justice, political or social, despite many forms of democracy around, and despite the concept of consultation, the shura, that is the shura in Islam. Despite the concept of consultation in Islam, we couldn't achieve or realize the justice. And after Omar came Osman and apparently adopted some patronage and was more tolerant, which created kind of opposition. The government was not divine, it was human, inclining towards religion, even with Muhammad. So the government was not divine, it's human. Even in time of Muhammad, it wasn't divine. The government has nothing to do with religion in Islam. We have to bear this in mind. Muhammad was not inspired on how to rule except to apply some commands. Since that time, certain aristocracy appears in Islam. So, hierarchy. One of having kinship with the Prophet dominated the political consensus, and Mecca became the source of successive rulers, and other tribes can only consult or be consulted. And slowly, tyrannical attitude prospered as Muslims became powerful and richer, which is a clear breach of equality. So things progressed from implementing equality to losing the spirit of it. as much as Muslims become richer and powerful. I mean, in the course of becoming richer and powerful. And maybe this has helped enough nourishing the ordeal, the problem we're talking about, the subject we're talking about, because justice was shaken. From this perspective, Osman initiated special precepts opposed by new generation of Muslims, naming, to name a few actually, Al-Khawarij, the outsiders, Al-Khawarij. They are dissenters and dissidents who played an essential role in this ordeal, which became indispensable. The ordeal became indispensable because of the corruption and the inequality and consequences like this. For the reasons we pointed to all along, so things got complicated, especially after the famous prompt expansion of Muslims in all directions in times of Omar and Osman. You know, the expansions. They became a larger country, powerful army, powerful state, powerful government, etc. And the Muslim became richer and their country became bigger and so on. Even, okay, now those elements of becoming bigger and richer help creating some chaos and disorder that Osman could not control. Some governors persecuted cities' inhabitants for no reason other than despotism. Around this time, Muawiyah, as we know, he's one of Osman's closest relatives, started to intervene and to play a role in major politics. While governing Damascus, known as the land of Sham, Muawiyah affected the lives of almost everyone everywhere, was cruel and malicious, sneaky and vicious, preparing something like a plot. Muawiyah, together with other relatives appointed by Osman to head governorship of three of the biggest states except Basra in Iraq. And Osman was instigated by Muawiyah and his tribe, or Muawiyah tribal influential team, to replace Abu Musa, who was governor of Basra. So they put a pressure on Osman to replace Abu Musa. Abu Musa was one of the early companions of the Prophet from Yemen. And so the fourth relative took over, which means Osman replaced Abu Musa. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari was known companion. And slowly Muawiyah gained more power and more land to become the strongest among governors and favored to Osman, and maybe second to Osman as well. So he took advantage, of course, and did not spare any opportunity. He was the first in that time as governor to wade, invade, and conquer the sea. He was tolerated much, even encouraged by Osman in every step he made. In the course of his power blowing, Muawiyah managed somehow to isolate Egypt from the direct dominance of Osman to pack it under his influence. He even gained sympathy of Hijaz later on. These and other social and political development started initiating the event of the Great Ordeal and the major strife, with some kind of revolution politicized to oust and or to kill Osman. Then, after Osman, they called on Ali to take over the Khilafah. This takeover was obstructed by Muawiyah in time because Osman, according to the stories, was not fair with them, with the people, that is, or with the other governors, or with the companions, and so on. So the spark started in Egypt, where two known persons from Quraysh left Medina because Osman, according to their stories, was not fair with them. And they started there instigating everybody and spoiled the politics against Osman. The scholars politicized as well their stand and positions, allowing many factions to take place and part in the huge conflict. In the midst of all this, and since the death of the Prophet, Ali was neglected and pushed aside from the big picture and away from becoming the Prophet Caliph. But there were supporters and corroboratives calling for his leadership, the leadership of Ali, what we know today as the Shia or Shia of Ali. Many companions as well were dissatisfied with Osman's policy and decision making. And we all know the place of Ali in the mind and heart of the Prophet. So he had some fanatic supporters. They wanted him to be the leader and so on. Osman was that time. Osman was exaggerating in the tolerance and the giveaways in many things. In his last time, he became somehow corrupted, or probably corruption was spread everywhere because his relatives are ruling the country altogether, and they were after making money, after being greedy and so on. Besides, Osman stayed more than 10 years in power, and it looks like he's gonna be there forever. So, the part of the population was bored, and because of the corruptions he exercised, then again they have that feeling to, without participating really, but feeling to want him out. So those two who went to instigate people in Egypt helped initiate what we call revolution, kind of. And people from all over, whether Egypt or Damascus or even Basra, they came to Medina and kind of invaded and occupied Medina, and then they killed Osman, as we know the story is. And Osman refused the help of Muawiyah, as the story says, but there's nothing sure about that. And the companions in the Medina, and they were reluctant, probably because of the corruption, probably because of the boring of his length, of the length of his reign and rulership, etc. And he was finally killed. And they called after that on Ali to take over. Muawiyah refused to accept Ali's leadership, and so on. We know the story. So, getting to this point, Muslims are facing two choices. I mean, getting to this point, then from then until now, Muslims are facing two choices. First, either adopt firmness and violence to solve their problems. Second, to adopt the wisdom of the Prophet and solve their problems away from violence, which means ruling with love and justice. Eventually, the majority chose the first choice, ruling with violence and firmness to solve their problems. And they still flip-flopping in ordeal after ordeal ever since. We know how the state of the Arab countries, the Muslim countries are. Turmoil, continuous trouble, and so on. Now, the murder of Osman is a sin, of course. Yes, he made mistakes, and who doesn't? I believe this is the worst downward turning point in the history of Islam. Thank you.